All right, so today we're really going big picture.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
Yeah, we're going to be looking at those huge forces that are kind of quietly shaping the world, Like,
Yeah,
we're talking about aging populations, how cities are booming, crime and safety, all that stuff.
right.
And of course, things like social inequality and poverty, the really deep-rooted problems.
Mm-hmm.
What's crazy is how connected it all is.
Absolutely.
It's like someone made us a cheat sheet to understand the 21st century.
I like that, a cheat sheet.
Right. But like, where do we even begin with all of this?
Well, you brought up aging populations, and
Yeah.
that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah.
It's interesting, because on the surface, people living longer, that's awesome. It's a great thing.
Absolutely.
Modern medicine is doing amazing things. But, it's not all sunshine and roses. This victory lap, it comes with some serious baggage, putting a ton of pressure on healthcare. Pensions are getting strained. Even the workforce itself is having to adapt.
Yeah, it's like a domino effect,
Oh, exactly.
One thing leads to another.
Exactly.
And speaking of dominoes,
Okay.
our source material actually uses this kind of dramatic phrase, the silver tsunami,
Oh, wow.
to describe like this huge wave of older folks, especially in places like Japan.
Oh, interesting.
Their economies having to deal with a shrinking workforce. Healthcare needs are going way up.
Yeah, I can imagine.
All sorts of challenges that are pretty unique to them.
Right.
But it really makes you realize this isn't some isolated thing happening over there.
No, not at all.
This is global, It's going to affect all of us.
It is.
Think about it. This wave keeps coming. We're looking at potential changes to, I don't know, taxes.
Oh, for sure.
The types of jobs that'll even be around.
Absolutely.
Even our source material pointed out that some countries, they're already talking about raising the retirement age,
Wow.
which has huge implications.
Yeah, for sure. Socially and economically.
Exactly. Huge decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, one thing's clear, right?
Yeah,
We can't just, stick our heads in the sand and hope this will all sort itself out.
definitely not.
But speaking of challenges, cities are growing so fast.
They are.
And that brings its own set of complex issues. Right?
Yes.
I mean, cities are these hubs of opportunity. They're exciting.
Yeah.
But our source material, it's pretty balanced.
Okay.
It acknowledges the downsides, too. You know?
Right.
There's that classic tension
Yeah.
between, like, the pull of opportunity and then the strain of all this fast growth.
Yeah, that push and pull.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So on one hand, cities, they attract investment.
Yeah.
They're like drivers of innovation. They've got all the jobs and all
Yeah.
the services that people are looking for.
Exactly.
But then on the other hand, you flip that coin over, you've got overcrowding,
For sure.
pollution, and
Yeah.
just like massive pressure on infrastructure. Okay, so infrastructure. We hear that word a lot.
Yeah, we do.
But for like the average person trying to live in a city,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean for them?
Think of it like a city's skeleton, right?
Very
You've got
good.
roads and bridges, public transport, water systems, all those things that keep a city running.
Right.
When the population explodes, it's like piling a ton of weight onto that skeleton.
Oh, I see.
If it's not built to handle it,
Yeah,
things start breaking down.
that makes sense.
Our source material actually had a really kind of stark example.
Oh.
Cape Town, South Africa.
Okay.
They almost completely ran out of water a few years back
Mm-hmm.
because the population grew so much, plus they had a drought.
Wow.
It's a really clear illustration of how fragile these urban systems can be.
Wow, that's intense.
It is.
Makes those complaints about traffic and expensive rent seem kind of small, huh?
Yeah, I guess in comparison.
Though, I'm sure anyone hunting for an apartment in a big city would disagree with me.
Probably.
Our source material does say that city dwellers, they put up with a lot,
They do?
but it also points out there's like a trade-off.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
What's the upside?
Well, cities often have better access to really important things like healthcare,
Oh, yeah.
education.
Right.
It's that constant push and pull, weighing the good and the bad.
Totally.
And speaking of complex things, maybe we should talk about crime and safety.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Is there even a direct link between these booming cities and crime rates going up?
Right. That's the natural question.
Yeah.
Like more people, more crime. Right.
Yeah.
What did our source material say about that?
Well, it's definitely more nuanced than just that.
Okay.
The source does say that poverty and lack of opportunity, just the sheer number of people crammed into these areas,
Yeah.
can play a role in higher crime. but it pushes back against the idea that urbanization just automatically equals more crime.
Oh, yeah.
It's more about how cities are dealing with these challenges, I think.
So what are they saying we should do? Is it all about like more police on the streets, or are there other things people are talking about?
Well, there are a lot of different ideas in the source material.
Okay.
It mentions things like surveillance technology,
Oh, wow.
which, some people might hear that and think Big Brother's watching.
Uh-huh.
But it's not just about cameras everywhere.
Okay.
The source also talks about community engagement programs, and those really caught my eye.
What's so interesting about that?
I think it kind of flips the script.
How so?
Instead of just relying on, law enforcement, it's about communities getting involved and being proactive about creating safety.
Interesting.
Things like neighborhood watch groups, youth outreach programs, initiatives that build trust between the police and the community.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting angle.
Yeah, it is.
It's not just reacting to crime after it happens, it's trying to prevent it,
Exactly.
Working together
Mm-hmm.
makes you think about what really makes people feel safe, huh?
Yeah, good point.
Is it just about, how many crimes there are?
Right.
Or is it more about that sense of community, belonging, shared responsibility?
I think it's all of that.
I love that phrase, safe havens.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That really resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
But that sense of safety or that lack of safety, it often comes down to economics, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And, that brings us right to our next big topic.
Yeah. Yes.
Social inequality and poverty.
Mm-hmm.
The source material really gets into this idea of the cycle of poverty.
Ooh, yeah, that phrase.
It's,
It always feels so heavy,
it does.
like this trap you can't escape.
Right.
Could you can you unpack that a bit?
Sure.
What actually creates this cycle, and why is it so hard to break?
It's complicated, Lots of different things are connected.
Yeah.
But imagine someone's born into poverty.
Okay.
They might go to schools that are underfunded.
Right.
They might not have good access to health care.
Mm-hmm.
They might lack the social networks that help people get ahead.
Right. Right.
All of that limits their chances of getting a good education.
Yeah.
A decent job.
Definitely.
And that makes it so much harder to break out of poverty.
Yeah.
And then that cycle, sadly, it repeats itself across generations.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
It is. The source material actually pointed to a study.
Okay.
It found that kids born into families in the bottom 20% for income, they're more than twice as likely to stay stuck there as adults
Wow.
than kids born into wealthier families.
That's a pretty stark statistic.
It is.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right?
No, not at all.
The source material actually talks about some solutions. It's not just about throwing money at the problem. It's about targeting the root causes.
And it emphasizes things like
Yeah.
investing in early childhood education, providing access to affordable health care, making it easier for people to get higher education,
Right.
and addressing all those systemic barriers that just keep inequality going.
Yeah, that makes sense.
These are long-term solutions,
Yeah.
They need consistent effort,
Right.
but they have the potential to really make a difference.
So it's not about quick fixes.
Yeah.
It's about, like, building a more fair and just society from the ground up.
Yeah.
I really like that phrase from the source, level the playing field.
It's a good one.
It's such a powerful image, right? It speaks to the need for fairness, for equal opportunity.
For everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what does that actually look like in your own community?
Good question.
What would real equality of opportunity actually require? It's something to think about, isn't it?
It really is, and it all comes back to that first point about how interconnected these issues are.
Yeah.
Aging populations,
Yeah.
urbanization, crime, poverty.
Yeah.
They're all tangled up together.
Totally.
And understanding that connection.
Yeah.
That's the key to creating a future that's sustainable and equitable for everybody. It
Yeah.
is no matter where they live,
Right.
no matter what stage of life they're in.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
but how do we actually turn all this understanding into action? That's the real question, right?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, and it's a question we'll keep digging into as we go deeper in this source material.
Looking forward to it.
But before we move on, I'm curious.
One thing that really stood out to me in the source material
Yeah.
was this whole idea of community engagement.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about it a little bit with crime prevention,
Right.
but it seems like it keeps coming up with all these challenges,
You're right. It's like,
Almost like a common thread.
yeah, like an underlying current
Yeah.
running through all these big trends. And it's interesting how the source material keeps talking about people coming together locally to tackle these problems,
Yeah.
It's not waiting for the government to fix it.
Right.
It's grassroots, people taking charge of their own communities.
Exactly. And what I found really interesting was how they connect community engagement with this concept of social capital.
Oh.
It argues that strong social networks built on trust
Yep.
and this idea of giving back to each other, that those are essential for building resilient communities.
Makes sense.
It even cited a study that found that neighborhoods with high levels of social capital,
Yeah, okay.
they tend to have lower crime rates,
Wow, that's interesting.
better health outcomes,
Really?
stronger economic growth.
It's like this secret ingredient
It really is.
that makes everything better.
It can make a big difference, yeah.
And it makes you think, we often get so caught up in the global stuff
Yeah, the big picture.
that we forget about what we can do individually.
Right, right.
It's like that saying, think globally, act locally.
Exactly.
But zooming back out for a second,
Okay.
we've talked a lot about the challenges cities face.
Mm-hmm.
But the source material also talks about all the opportunities, right?
Absolutely. Cities are these hubs of innovation and creativity.
They are.
They bring together so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
People collaborate. Things change quickly.
Yeah.
And as more and more people move to cities, the question is, how do we design them?
Right.
So they're not just efficient
Right.
and sustainable, but also vibrant,
Yeah.
equitable, livable.
Like places where everyone can actually thrive.
Exactly.
That's the big question, right?
It is.
And the source material, it doesn't shy away from the hard parts of urban planning.
No, it doesn't.
And actually talks about some specific examples like Copenhagen,
Oh, interesting.
how they focus on bike-friendly infrastructure.
I've heard they're doing some cool things.
Yeah. And Singapore, how they're doing vertical farming.
Oh, wow.
These cities are trying new things
Yeah.
to deal with density, limited resources, environmental stuff.
It's great to see that kind of experimentation.
And what I thought was really insightful was how the source material emphasized getting the community involved in the planning process.
Oh, that's so important.
It's not just experts making decisions.
No, it shouldn't be.
It's about co-creation, working with residents to shape their own neighborhoods.
Exactly, because who knows a neighborhood better
Yeah, exactly.
than the people who actually live there?
They're the ones who see the problems every day.
Right.
They understand the little details.
Yeah.
They probably have a ton of great ideas.
Absolutely. It's about tapping into that local knowledge,
Yeah,
giving them the power to shape their own environments.
I love that.
Speaking of environments, one thought I keep having.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about cities.
We have.
But what about rural communities?
Ooh, yeah.
What happens to them as the world becomes more and more urban?
That's a huge question.
It is.
And our source material does touch on it.
Okay.
It acknowledges the challenges, like population shrinking, economy struggling,
Right. Yeah.
limited access to services, and this feeling of being left behind.
Yeah, disconnected from the centers of power and opportunity.
Exactly.
And it's easy to see urbanization and rural decline as two sides of the same coin.
Right, like one's going up, the other's going down.
Yeah, but the source material argues that we need to find ways to support both.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
It's about creating a more balanced system
Right.
where everyone has the chance to thrive no matter where they live.
So how do we do that?
Right. How do we bridge that gap? How do we make sure rural communities have a voice?
It makes me think of that phrase, level the playing field again.
Yeah, absolutely. It applies here, too.
It's about making sure resources and opportunities are shared more fairly, investing in rural infrastructure, supporting local businesses,
Right.
making sure people have access to good education, healthcare, even high-speed internet.
All of that.
It's about recognizing that strong rural communities are good for everyone.
Exactly. Not just the people who live there.
And it reminds me of something else the source talked about,
What's that?
the role of technology in bridging this gap.
Oh, interesting.
It talked about how things like telemedicine, online education, remote work,
Uh-huh.
that these things can create new opportunities for rural communities to connect.
Right. Connect with the rest of the world.
Exactly.
Participate in the global economy.
But it also mentioned the downsides.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Like, if not everyone has access to technology.
Right. It could make things worse.
Yeah, exacerbate those inequalities we've been talking about.
It's not a perfect solution.
Definitely not.
It's about using technology in a way that empowers people.
Right, not divides them even more.
Exactly.
And that brings us to a really important point, I think. It's been running through this whole conversation.
I'm listening.
It just strikes me that we've been talking about all these solutions,
Yeah.
But we haven't really talked about the root of the problem.
That's true.
It's like we're putting Band-Aids on things
Right.
without really understanding what's causing the problem in the first place.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
And I think a big part of it is this lack of understanding, this inability to see how all these issues are connected.
Absolutely right.
It's like we've put all these challenges in separate boxes.
Yeah, like silos.
Exactly. And we treat them as if they're totally separate things.
Right, instead of seeing them as part of a bigger picture.
Exactly.
And that makes it hard to find solutions that really work,
Totally. And our source material actually talks about this.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, it highlights the importance of systems thinking.
Oh, interesting.
That ability to see the whole thing.
Yeah.
Not just the individual parts.
It's like that saying, can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, exactly.
You get so focused on the details that you miss the bigger picture.
Totally. And the source argues that we need to move beyond this, like, linear thinking.
Okay.
Cause and effect.
Yeah.
And embrace a more complex understanding of how these things all interact.
Right, because it's not always that simple.
It's not. So instead of just saying, okay, let's reduce crime rates, we need to ask, like, what are the things that lead to crime in the first place?
Right, like poverty, lack of opportunity.
Exactly.
Systemic discrimination.
All that. And then how do we address those things?
Right, how do we get to the root of the problem?
Exactly. So that we can create a society that's actually just and equitable for everyone.
It's a big task, but it's important.
It is. And it requires, like, a shift in thinking.
Yeah.
Moving from just reacting to things to actually trying to prevent them.
Being proactive.
Yes. And understanding that every little thing we do has an impact.
Right. Even small changes can make a difference.
And that brings us back to individual agency.
Oh, absolutely.
Because even though these problems feel huge,
yeah, they can feel overwhelming.
we can't just give up,
No,
we all have a role to play in making things better.
And it starts with being curious.
Right?
Asking questions, trying to understand.
Challenging our own assumptions.
Exactly. It's about embracing that deep dive mentality.
I love that.
In everything we do.
Yeah, it's about being open to learning and growing.
And recognizing that the world is complex.
It is. And the more we learn, the more we realize we don't know.
That's so true.
And that's okay.
It is. It's about being humble.
Yeah.
Being willing to admit we don't have all the answers.
Exactly. And being open to different perspectives.
That reminds me of something else the source material talked about.
What's that?
The importance of dialogue and collaboration.
Oh, that's crucial.
It's not about yelling at each other.
No, not at all.
It's about finding common ground.
Listening to each other.
Exactly. Working together to find solutions that work for everyone. Because none of us has all the answers, right?
Definitely not.
And often the best ideas come from bringing together people with different backgrounds.
Different experiences.
Different viewpoints.
It's in that messy, sometimes uncomfortable space.
Yeah, where people disagree.
That we can actually make progress.
So where the magic happens.
Well said. Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Okay.
The world is full of challenges, yes.
It is.
But it's also full of opportunities.
Absolutely.
It's a world that's constantly changing.
Always evolving.
And it's up to each of us to decide what role we want to play in shaping that change.
So what will your role be?
That's a great question for everyone to think about.
It is.
And don't underestimate the power of your own voice.
Right.
Your actions, your unique contribution.
Every little thing you do matters.
Every act of kindness.
Every effort to understand.
Every step towards making the world a better place.
It all adds up.
It really does. So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep diving deep.
The world needs your curiosity.
Your passion.
Your willingness to make a difference.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you today.
Likewise, until next time, keep those minds curious and those conversations flowing.